So here comes another niche video, but I just have to say this. Korean developers have been on fire lately. South Korea's always had a presence in video games, giving us hits like Dave the Diver, MapleStory, DJ Max, and the Dungeon & Fighter series. They even taken on some known properties like Metal Slug 4 and some of the King of Fighters titles when SNK declared bankruptcy. And of course, a childhood favorite of mine, Gunbound. I don't know if I trust playing this nowadays though. Either way, Korean games have a great track record. So it's kind of interesting to see that a lot of different South Korean developers are all tackling one specific genre. Soulslikes. Yeah, the subgenre that is not for the faint of heart. These games will kick you in the dirt and look you dead in the eye and play a little violin to mock you. They are not relaxing, or the type of game someone plays to de-stress after a long day, unless you're a psychopath who enjoys the taste of their own blood. Well, I just happen to be one of those sickos. Kind of. I actually don't like the Dark Souls games at all, but I adore Bloodborne. I rage quitted Sekiro, and I still need to finish Elden Ring. I'm taking my time with that one. But yeah, back to the main topic. In the years 2023, 2024, and 2025, South Korea has given us a Souls-like annually, and they're all amazing in their own right. So instead of the usual ramble of going through a bunch of games in a particular genre, there's less quantity here and far more quality. So this is going to be more of a spotlight video of 3 particular games that have really wowed me in recent years, and they all happen to share the same criteria. They are Soulslikes, developed in South Korea. But before we get to those 3, let's start this off like we always do. So, here's a history lesson. Alright, let's give credit where credit is due. Video games were invented by a British man in the 50s, semi-misappropriated by a German American in the 60s, and then shaped into what it is today by the Japanese in the 80s. So where does South Korea fall into this history? Well, pretty much at the dawn of video games in the 70s. The first video game officially released in South Korea was none other than Pong. But it was relabeled as Computer TV, and these cabinets were installed in a major department store in Seoul. From there, video games began to gain popularity. Just like the rest of the world, home Pong consoles were developed, and arcades began to open everywhere. But this was met with some resistance. People began to associate the arcades as hubs for criminal behavior. So the government literally stepped in and had state-approved arcades, which meant many others would be deemed illegal. There was some merit to the government worrying, since most of these arcades used to be slot machine gambling rooms, but this is around the time that the South Korean government was a totalitarian regime. So, screw them. Thankfully, one assassination later, South Korea took a step away from authoritarianism, and in 1983, the government made some legal changes, forcing establishments to only house gambling machines or video games, not both. This is a good thing in the long run because the stigma of arcade games harming the youth went the way of the dodo. And by this point, South Korea went game crazy, importing machines from around the world, bootlegging some, and ultimately forming their own development companies. But they were all pretty much rip-offs of other games. So, fine. What was the first original game developed in South Korea? Well, in 1987, after a new law protected copyrighted material, companies had to start releasing their own original games. And the first recorded instance was in October 1987, with the RPG Sinjum Unjinsu. I might have butchered that. Also known as Dream Traveler Part 1, or The Legend of the Sword. Developer Na Min-won first made this game in his high school years for the Apple II, which is just impressive. Now, whether this is the first original South Korean game is not certain. Some other games could precede it, but this is the earliest commercial instance we have evidence for. So what was the game like? It was a fantasy adventure game heavily inspired by Ultima. You wandered around essentially an open world filled with towns and NPCs to talk to. Your typical RPG fare. It spawned a sequel, and propped up Na Min-won to be heralded as the father of KRPGs. Which I just have to say, I mean, of course the first game to come out of South Korea is an RPG. It just makes complete sense. It doesn't feel like coincidence at all. And yeah, I had no idea about any of this before researching this video. So yeah, makes complete sense to me. Also, by the way, if you want to know more about the history of South Korea and video games, I recommend the website where I got all this info from. Hardcore Gaming 101. I just wanted to highlight the history briefly. But if you want to take a deep dive into their past, check out this website. Links in the description. So there you have it. The Korean aspect is done. But what about the Souls-like part? That shouldn't be too hard to explain, right? Well, a Souls-like game is a game like the Soulsborne series of games, similar to how roguelikes are to the game Rogue. Sorry, that sounded a bit confusing. Let me try that again. A Soulsborne game is any one of these. Games made by developer FromSoftware, which follows a similar formula. A tough-as-nails action RPG that follows a pseudo-permadeath structure. Yes, you can have multiple separate runs, but each individual save overwrites itself and has only the most recent one. Each game map is backtrackable, but it's ultimately a linear world littered with checkpoints, where you can save and level up your character. And every time you visit them, the world is repopulated with the enemies you previously killed. You have a finite stamina bar that is exhausted very quickly, but can be upgraded. Usually you have a limited number of healing items that are only replenished when you hit a checkpoint, and each area is punchline with a boss. You find new weapons, armor, and items that increase your chances of survival. The combat used to be synonymous with slow attack and block style tactics, but ever since Bloodborne, everything went to hell. To be honest, this all sounds pretty normal fare for an RPG. So then, what makes them stand out? Well, you're expected to die. A lot. Over and over and over and over again. Anybody who tells you they beat a Soulsborne game without dying on their first try is a bald-faced liar.
Fucking liar.
Enemy placement is deliberate and malicious. Instant death pits are everywhere. You need to learn enemy attack patterns to be able to dodge or parry them. Bosses have ridiculous amounts of health, and the farther you progress, some bosses even have multiple phases to them. But above all else, all the experience you gain from taking down enemies one by one can be lost in an instant. The game doesn't have permadeath exactly, but if you die with unused experience points, you can lose them permanently. Yes, you can recover them. You respawn at your last checkpoint, and if you find where you died, you can pick them right back up. But if you die again before finding them, they disappear forever. This mechanic alone has led to many players rage quitting the whole genre of games completely, and has resulted in many broken controllers. So that's a Soulsborne game. A Soulslike is a game that emulates this type of game, but it's also not made by FromSoftware, so pretty easy to understand. But yeah, we're still in the history section, so let's narrow down what's the first game in this whole subgenre, whether it be Soulsborne or Soulslike. Well, that would be this, Demon Souls. Now this is the remake on PS5, but the original came out with a little fanfare in 2009, but it developed a cult following, which led to FromSoftware developing Dark Souls in 2011. And we all know what happened after that. But the funniest thing about all of this, the game designer of all the Soulsborne games, Hidetaka Miyazaki, a man who has gone on record saying that he has trouble playing his own games, says he's not deliberately trying to make them hard. Instead, he thinks the challenge is what makes them fun and rewarding.
He's out of line, but he's right.
So Demon Souls is the beginning of this whole Souls subgenre. But I want to go a step further because I'll be brief, but I want to highlight every game that pioneered every single one of these gameplay mechanics because while Demon Souls is the first one to put them all together, it didn't invent any of them. Speed round. What was the first action RPG? That would be 1984's Dragon Slayer, which itself was inspired by the Tower of Druaga, a 1984 arcade game which was an action dungeon crawler, as well as 1983's Panorama Toe, a game with many action RPG ideas that were still a bit too archaic to label them real-time action mechanics. What was the first game with checkpoints? 1984's Pitfall 2 Lost Caverns for the Atari systems. What was the first game to have a stamina bar that was tied to combat? Well, that would be 1984's Punch-Out. Damn, 1984 was the year for pioneers. But what about the first RPG to have a combat stamina bar? That would be 1993's Secret of Mana. What about the first game that made you lose XP when you died? Well, that would be 2002's MMO Final Fantasy XI, at least the vanilla version. And no, you couldn't recover it. You just had to get back to grinding. I don't know why do people find this fun? And what about FromSoftware as a company? What was their first game? That would be 1994's Kingsfield, which in many ways was a proto-Souls game. 3D action RPG with a rudimentary stamina bar and enemies that could kill you blindfolded. You're the level 1 rat enemy to them. You think Demon Souls is hard? Nah, try playing an early 90s RPG designed to be unfair. Only way to prevail here is to get good. I swear that's the only time I'll say that this whole video. Now, funny enough, Miyazaki had nothing to do with this game. Looks like FromSoftware knew what they were looking for when they hired him, huh? So there you go, that's the history. Now let's get to the meat of this video, and that's of course talking about the main games I want to showcase. Now the first one is the first Souls-like to come out of South Korea. And that's of course, Lies of P. Such a weird name. Released in September of 2023, Lies of P was met with universal acclaim. And yet, I didn't buy it at launch. By this point in time, I didn't even have a PS5 yet, and that's how I wanted to play it. Yes, a last-gen version existed, but this is the kind of game I wanted to own physically and wanted to play in 60 FPS. Even though Bloodborne is 30 FPS, and that is still fantastic to this day. Speaking of which, let's be real. The only reason I even gave this game a passing glance is the fact that it looks exactly like Bloodborne. From the trailers, this was yet another Souls-like game, which we had a glut of by 2023. But this was the closest to resemble Bloodborne. Its dark atmosphere was dreary and gothic like the city of Yharnam, and the combat looked very familiar. Fast-paced, yet technical in its movement. This struck a positive chord among gamers, and Lies of P looked like the Bloodborne spiritual sequel we've been waiting for. So finally, after a PS5-filled 2023 holiday, I finally picked up Lies of P in 2024. And I think I like it more than Bloodborne? Alright, that isn't true, but it comes close. Like I said, the gameplay is very reminiscent of Bloodborne, just with its own cool mechanics. The P-Organ skill tree is a great way to upgrade with your own playstyle in mind. You can't upgrade it 100%, well at least not your first playthrough, so you have to pick and choose what upgrades you really need. Combat is a bit stiff. It's just like if you're in the middle of an attack, you can't really, animation cancel into something else. You have to plan out your moves ahead of time, and the one fault I have to give the game is the parry system. Good God, it's no joke. In order to parry, you have to block right when the enemy attack lands. And yeah, that's how it is for most games, but the window of time it gives you is less than 10 frames. 10 frames. The game is running at 60 FPS, so that is less than 1/6 of a second. Getting that down is worth it, and I kind of eventually got the hang of it. But my God, it's way too unforgiving for casual players. I mean, even Sekiro gave you a window of 12 frames, and that game, I would say, is harder in general. So you know what? If you don't use the parry, I mean, it's fine. I gotta be honest, I rarely used the parry until I was forced to with some boss fights. I blocked, yeah, but whenever I got a parry before I started to practice it like late game, it was just due to more luck than anything. So, while I do enjoy the parry now, it is hard to master. So, in a way, that is one thing against the game. But, now let's focus back on the good. And one huge aspect is the weapons. The multitude of unique weapons are just so much fun to play with and customize. Yeah, I said customize. Each weapon is made up of two parts, a handle and the blade. And outside of a few solid weapons, they can all be mixed with each other. It's fun to mix and match and can also be helpful in certain boss fights that are weak to certain elements. But once you find that one weapon combo you fall in love with, you'll never let go. Well, at least until you find the two-dragon sword. That's more close to the end of the game. Either way, your playstyle is determined by whichever weapon you stick with, but the stock fire axe was my tool of choice for like 80% of the game. I just can't get enough of that lunge attack. It delivers a powerful hit and it closes the distance really quick. Overall, the fire axe hits hard and it makes quick work of enemies that have to charge up their own strong attacks.
Chop that wood! Yeah, that's it!
You also have a second weapon in the form of the Legion Arm, and this has a few variants. These range from an explosive shield, a stun glove, to even a puppet string that acts like Mortal Kombat's Scorpion's hook ability.
Get over here!
But my favorite was the armor-piercing explosive. It definitely helped me take out some enemies from a distance, as well as pull off some sweet dodge shots. So yeah, at first I thought it was just going to be just like Bloodborne. But thanks to the weapons and the parry system, it feels like its own beast altogether. This ain't no ripoff. Speaking of which, let's get back to the main reason why I even compared this to Bloodborne in the first place. The overall aesthetic. Dark Souls is depressing fantasy gray, Sekiro is dark Japanese folklore, and Bloodborne is gothic industrial age. Well, Lies of P saw the last one and said yes please. But anybody thinking that they just ripped off the whole lore and aesthetic is going to be sorely mistaken here. Instead, they ripped off a fairy tale. Alright, I'm lying. This is not a ripoff, but it is an adaptation of Pinocchio, and it's quite possibly the darkest interpretation I've ever seen in my life. Whether you're familiar with the original fairy tale or the Disney movie, you will recognize many aspects here. Puppets, the carnival, Geppetto, and of course the whole I want to be a real boy thing. But developer Round 8 Studio decided to make it their own. Saying it's a loose interpretation is putting it mildly, because things are vastly different. But I honestly love that they went with this approach. They focus more on the darker themes and ultimately the darkness of humanity. I won't spoil anything, but the basic gist here is that you're a Pinocchio, and you've awoken to do one thing: protect humanity from all the others like you. Puppets. The whole world is also ravaged by a disease, and Pinocchio is trying to wrestle with his own desire to be human, as well as telling the truth. At many points in the game, you are given choices whether to lie or not, and this can affect the ending, so be careful what you choose. But to be honest, this is all incidental. The story is great. It's a twisted tale that I honestly really enjoyed. But you can outright ignore it, because the main focus here is you are Pinocchio and you must kill. And you do so through the city of Krot, a European steampunk hellscape in the middle of a quarantine. You try to survive through the desolate city streets, a puppet factory, and even an island full of monsters. Every single area feels unique and doesn't feel like a copy and paste of each other. This is also complemented well with a pretty great soundtrack. It captures the vibe of a Baroque European era on the verge of collapse. The strings and the piano stand out the most here, and can directly target your nerves when it needs to. And whenever the accordion slides in, you know you're in for a puppet murdering good time. But of course, when you hit the boss fights, expect the percussion and devilish choir to spike your adrenal gland. It blends well with everything and adds to the wonderful art style that transports you back to these dark ages. It really hammers in the feeling of hopelessness and fear without going full horror game, even though it very much is a horror game. I mean, seriously, I wouldn't judge if you found any of this scary. I mean, some of the creature design here is straight up people's nightmares. And if you're one of the people who hate mannequins or puppets in general, I recommend not even looking in this game's direction, because some of these bastards are pure nightmare fuel. Not just the way they look, again, they are freaky and well done, but I want to talk about how they work gameplay-wise. All the normal enemies are hard to take down on their own, especially if you get overrun. But to be honest, they are all fodder to help you level up so you can take on the real threat at the end of each section. Each one of these bosses is a force to be reckoned with. Let's just forget that they all have ridiculous life bars for a moment. Every single one of these bastards are unique, and they all have different methods of killing you. Some of these behemoths just love to do huge attacks that take up a huge area of their arena, requiring you to run out of the way as fast as possible. While smaller, more agile bosses can do lunge attacks from a great distance and close the gap with a strong hit. Or even the elemental bosses that use elemental attacks meant to handicap you and make your life go down even faster. Add on the fact they all have special attacks you can't parry, and some bosses have multiple phases with completely different fighting styles. Either way, these mothers are out for blood. They make sure that you know you are their bitch. That is, at least until you learn their moveset. It's like poker. After a while you start to understand your opponent's tells. In this case, they telegraph their moves, so now it's up to you to remember them. Once you get those down, now it's up to you to not screw it up. Let's bring that life bar back into play. Yeah, you gotta chip away all that health. Oh yeah, another fun tidbit is that bosses can regenerate their health. You see that extra part in their life bar? If you don't attack them for a period of time, they slowly gain that back.
Oi. Fuck!
You can do this too, but unlike Bloodborne, where this is possible after any damage you receive, this only applies to damage you receive while blocking. Sorry, I almost forgot that mechanic existed. But to be honest, I didn't notice it in-game until I started to get, into the more difficult bosses. In this case, I prefer Bloodborne, because it gives you an incentive to fight back more aggressively all the time. Whereas in Lies of P, I never really focused on the guard regain. Not even during boss fights, which in hindsight maybe I should have. I mean, either way, boss fights can be grueling, and no matter how difficult they are, you can always fall back on the age-old tactic. Grind till you can dominate the opposition. It's the most classic feeling of the 3 games I want to talk about today, but damn it, did I not love every second of it. Also, don't fret, you can summon a phantom ally to help you in battle. They are only summoned with an item called a star fragment, so I recommend feeling out the boss before wasting this on a phantom, or just farm the hell out of the item. I mean, that's what I did. I had like 99 by the time this game was done. All in all, Lies of P is phenomenal. And you know what? I'm still not done because this game just got some DLC. Sorry, that's an understatement, because what I meant to say was this is a full-blown expansion. This is Lies of P Overture. A new story that acts as a prequel, new harder enemies. And I really want to emphasize harder here. These new enemies piss me off. I mean, these animals just hammer you endlessly, and I love the challenge, but my god is it aggravating. New areas to explore. I really liked the carnival and the zoo. Made me feel like I was in a zombie version of Jumanji or something. And the weapons. I think they're all fine additions, but giving me the death talons early on was a huge mistake.
Should I call you Logan, Weapon X?
No, Wolverine, snippy, snoring.
I also fell in love with the new Legion arm, the Cataclysm. Or how I call it, the
Shotgun!
Whenever you land a perfect parry with this, god, it feels so good. The expansion takes about 15 to 20 hours to get through, and it doesn't feel like more of the same. It's definitely worth the $30. But I do have one huge gripe. If you've beaten the game and started a new Game Plus save, you'd have to play all the way back up to Chapter 9 to start the DLC. I understand this for new players, since Overture requires you to be skilled. It's harder than the main campaign. But for someone who already beat the game, this is a stupid setback. Thankfully I had an old cloud save from before I beat the boss, so I just reloaded it. But this is a dumb oversight. Overture should be available whenever you're on a new Game Plus run. Besides that, if you've progressed enough or haven't started a new Game Plus, I highly recommend it. It also just got a free update with the new boss challenge mode, and 2 new difficulties to choose from. both of which are easier than the launch difficulty. I know this is a far cry to you Souls elitists, but no one is forcing you to play it on easy. This just means that more people will be able to play this masterpiece. Yeah, I will always choose the hardest mode too, but why would I care if someone plays the game differently than me? Choice is a good thing. Don't gatekeep. Regardless, the developers did an amazing job here, so much so that I immediately had to look up what else this company has worked on. And they are mainly a mobile game company that makes ports for Android and iOS. They put out a very mediocre MMO in 2020, but that's dead now, so meh. So yeah, Lies of P was so good that I just got hung up on the fact that it was made in South Korea. I don't know why, but it kind of dawned on me that I had never really played that many games from South Korea, or at least I never really noticed. So I wanted to find more. And thankfully I didn't have to look that far, because a year later, we got Stellar Blade. I gotta be honest, when I first saw the trailer for this, I was not that interested.
Fucking liar.
No, seriously. I mean, it just looked like it was going to be one of those games gooners were meant to play one-handed. Alright, when the demo came out, I did download it for a second. I messed around with it. I mean, I played with it. I played it. But ultimately, yeah, it wasn't something I wanted to shell out $70 for on launch day. So I kind of forgot about it and moved on. Which leads us to right around the time I beat Lies of P. And well, hey, I bought this a year after release, so I do have self-control, alright? Stellar Blade released to the PS5 in April 2024 to very great sales and really good reviews. Yeah, despite the game proving to the masses that sex sells, it turned out to be a great game too. Now before we go further, some of you actually out there don't see this game as a Souls-like, so let's tackle the gameplay first. Now the developers at Shift Up have pointed to Bayonetta and Nier Automata as huge inspirations for Stellar Blade, so much so that there's a DLC mashup with the latter available. But those are most definitely not Souls-like games. Bayonetta is a hack and slash similar to the likes of Devil May Cry, and Nier Automata is a hack and slash with some crazy shoot 'em up sections as well. But while Stellar Blade is very reminiscent of those, it also seems to adopt elements of the Soulsborne games. All across the map are checkpoints where you level up and replenish your limited health sources. All the enemies respawn when you rest, and the difficulty is not necessarily for the average player. Yes, unlike a typical Soulsborne game, Stellar Blade allows you to choose the difficulty, at least on your first playthrough. You are given two options, story, essentially easy, or normal. And while people like me who grew up on the Super Nintendo, PS1, and arcade games would consider this normal, for people who grew up on 360 and PS3, this is definitely hard mode. I'm talking punch you in the face hard. The enemies are not pushovers, and once again, bosses with huge life bars is the norm here. So why wouldn't people consider this a Souls-like? Well, it's kind of two things. First, there is no stamina bar. This alone makes combat far easier to handle, but to be honest, that doesn't take away from the overall difficulty. If anything, this is a feature that Stellar Blade doesn't need, since there's some pretty big areas to run around and explore. Even though Elden Ring has a similar feature, where the stamina bar doesn't apply outside of battle, so I'd call it a mulligan. Stellar Blade could have done that, but it's not that game changing. No, instead the real aspect that makes this game almost miss the mark is the fact that when you die, you don't lose your XP. You don't have to go and recover it, you just respawn and try again. All the enemies still respawn, and you lose items you've used so far, but you don't have to start from scratch if you die twice in a row. That's pretty much it. I do see where some people are coming from. The mechanic is a very big part of the Soulsborne series. It's this permanence that adds an extra layer to the difficulty of the game. And when you recover your souls, it's not just a relief. It also gives you the gratification of risk-reward. So yeah, this game doesn't have that. But come to think of it, this is not enough to discount Stellar Blade. I mean, going back to Lies of P, the developer didn't go all the way there either. When you die, you lose your ergo, and you must recover it as usual. But if you die again, you don't lose all of your ergo, like Soulsborne's. Instead, a percentage of it is lost when you die, or when you get hit when you're trying to go back to recover it. You regain your lost ergo if you kill the enemy that hit you, so if you're just planning to run through and just go get your XP, and you get hit, the game gives you incentive to stop and defend yourself, which I kind of prefer. Yes, that all or nothing mechanic makes for a far more tense game loop, but when you lose it, the anger you feel is something else. I mean, I remember screaming at the top of my lungs a couple times playing Bloodborne. So you know what? I'm fine with them making it less soul-crushing. You still feel the risk-reward when you recover them anyways. Hell, even Sekiro has a different mechanic here where you... Sorry, yeah, kind of went a whole tangent there, my bad. But yeah, bottom line is, Stellar Blade does not have the lose your souls mechanic. But after plowing through it, it still very much feels like a Souls-like. Every single enemy can take you down by themselves. Enemy placement is vindictive as all hell. Dodging and parrying are something you're going to need to master, and the boss battles, oh boy, the boss battles. Wherever you read praise about this game, there is one thing that is always brought up, and that is how incredibly fun these boss battles are. Once again, they are hard, but goddamn are they a blast to get through. The majority are some kaiju-looking mothers, and they all have unique ways to try and kill you. From elemental to outright screen-clearing moves, the boss battles in Stellar Blade are something you kind of marvel at. They're all difficult at first, but once you get their signature dance moves down, you'll be salsaing these monsters right into their grave. Because no matter how many times you fall, it's their interesting design that makes you want to come back for more. I mean, the developers gave us a boss rush mode in post-launch DLC. They understood what the audience liked about their product. Which brings me to the overall combat. While fluid and easy to pick up and play, it needs to be practiced to really get the swing of it. What I mean is you can dodge and attack all you want, but like Lies of P, there are no real animation cancels. So if you're in the middle of a light attack and you want to parry an upcoming hit, you better think about this prior. You really got to commit to your combos, or they can lead to you getting rocked. But overall, I'm glad the main combat flow is strong, because you only have access to the one melee weapon. This may seem like a bummer, but you have multiple skill trees that unlock a multitude of different abilities, on top of maneuvers and overall stat buffs. You also have access to beta trance attacks and burst attacks, both of which rely on their own meters. You gain beta from attacks and blocks, while you get burst from successful dodges. It's pretty straightforward, and once you level up enough, you'll be grooving combos like nobody's business. I also have to mention that the enemies can deliver a specific quote-unquote unblockable fatal attack. They aren't one-hit deaths, but they deal extensive damage and can lead to a type of grab move where you become helpless for a brief moment. To counter these, the game gives you an on-screen cue, whether it's a purple or blue light flare. You must correspond with the necessary dodge to counter it. If it's purple, you must dodge back, breaking their attack, and if it's blue, you dodge forward, which causes Eve to blink face behind the enemy, leaving them open to attack. Just another bit of mechanics to make those boss fights even more stellar.
Why you pulling me? I'm right.
On top of the main combat, you also get a gun as you progress, which is pretty useful to chunk enemies more after you pull off a good combo. But the highlight of the gun here is there are dedicated sections of the game where you lose access to your sword and the game shifts into a third-person shooter that honestly I would compare to the likes of modern Resident Evil games. I mean, all the enemies are undead ghouls, and in these sections you're in a laboratory setting, so you can definitely see some sort of horror inspiration here. Salt in some platforming sections that are pretty self-explanatory. None are too difficult except for one section designed to be that way since it's technically a secret area, but don't worry, there are no instant death pits. I mean, you can die from fall damage if you fall into an area that you're meant to walk on, but death pits, you just respawn with some of your health lost. Yeah, I don't get it either. Also, puzzles are another element to the game, whether it's a lock on an item chest or a lock on an actual door you need to progress through. They pop up pretty frequently, but they're just kind of there. They aren't bad. Well, most aren't. The ones that require you to slowly move around heavy containers to jump on, yeah, those puzzles suck. These don't really feel necessary and do kind of bring the game to a bit of a screeching halt. Thankfully, these are less common. They are annoying, but you'll live. Regardless, there's a good amount of variety here. There's even a fishing pole you can unlock. I don't know why they decided to add in a fishing minigame, but you know what? I kind of enjoyed it. Found it to be a great distraction to break up the intense fighting sections. Granted, it was a semi-stressful button-mashing fest, but hey, a win's a win. And since we're on the topic of wins, let's now go on to the aspects that completely won me over. And that is the overall vibe of the game. The opening is very balls to the wall and action heavy and really gets you pumped. But to be honest, this isn't what hooked me. Instead, it was the somber tone of the next area that reeled me in. After the prologue, you're dropped into the first main area of the game, outdo 7. This post-apocalyptic city has been taken back over by the elements, and everything just gives off a pleasing green hue. It's decrepit, but full of life. It's almost haunting in a way. But this is quickly overshadowed by the music. Now, I know this isn't for everyone, but to me, this has now become one of my favorite soundtracks of any game. It's calm and passive when it needs to be, really complementing the setting. It gets heart-pounding when you enter a fight, and it can be atmospheric and intense when the plot begins to heat up. And I loved every second of it. The guitar riffs, bass, drums, and vocals stand out in each song, and they immerse you into the world and story in front of you. Even when the plot itself isn't that strong to begin with. I will attest that it's a very interesting science fiction premise, but it's the weakest aspect of the whole game. Basically, you play as Eve, a member of the 7th Airborne Squad, and your goal is to kill creatures called nativas that are destroying Earth. It ultimately deals with humans, androids, aliens, and touches on subjects of extinction and humanity. Kind of like Lies of P. Kind of a cool little common ground there. But It's all taken very seriously, and Eve must take down the evildoer's plan at any cost.
We've got to put a stop to this. Wow, look at that ass.
In all seriousness, the story's a bit one note in some places, and you can sort of see some revelations coming from a mile away. And most of the NPCs are one-dimensional cardboard. But overall, it's okay. It's not gonna make you cry or annoy you. It's not bad. It's a good way to get you from point A to point Z. It's cool, for lack of a better word. So there you go. The story's the weakest aspect of the game. That's a shame. But the gameplay is really fun, and the aesthetic may not be for everyone, and that should really balance things out, right? It's just another good action RPG. I would agree with that, if it wasn't for the fact that this game has now become one of my favorite games of all time, or at least of this generation. You may be wondering, how did that happen? No, it's not because of that. If anything, it's actually more due to nostalgia. The reason this game really clicked with me is that it feels like a game from the early 2000s. It has a nonsensical story, the main character is hyper-sexualized, but an absolute badass. She would fit right in the 2000s. And by the way, this hyper-sexualization also applied to guys back then too. I mean seriously, Dante was the sexual awakening to some people out there. The combat feels like it was lifted from the era, and the music is reminiscent of something I would hear off a CD player at the time. It's poppy with a good melody. The game overall just feels like a hidden gem on the original Xbox or something. But probably the aspect that really reminds me of the good old days are the collectibles. I don't know why, but I'm a sucker for finding and collecting a bunch of in-game items. Nowadays, any kind of unlockables are usually obtained by breaking out your old credit card. But in Stellar Blade, they went the old reliable route, at least for the majority of them. Finding them around the world map, buying them from NPCs with in-game currency, or even as a reward from side quests you get off a bulletin board. These range from usable combat items, modules used to upgrade your tools, special gears that give you stat buffs, cool collectible drink cans, or the most notable unlockables, the cosmetics. Now, even Lies of P has its own cosmetics you can unlock, but they are more given to you and they aren't something I was actively hunting for. There was no emphasis to collect them like there is in Stellar Blade. It's like games of yesteryear, where it felt like you were Easter egg hunting, and sometimes they were hard to find, so you needed a gaming magazine or guide to help you find all the game's secrets. Modern day achievement hunters will get a kick out of trying to collect them all. And also, let's be real, while they don't change Eve's attributes, they definitely display how downright gorgeous she is. I mean, despite the fact that I wear glasses, I'm not blind. She is hot. You can change her earrings, put glasses on her, change her hairstyle, and ultimately her nanosuit, and there are so many to find. Some practical battle suits, and some that are just downright risque to say the least. By the way, did you know that prawn, yeah, I'm not going to say the actual word, prawn, is illegal in South Korea. It's a felony. Yeah. Everything about Eve's design makes complete sense to me now. Now before this launched, it once again revitalized the old debate of female portrayals in video games, but people couldn't call her unrealistic. In fact, Eve is based off a body scan of a well-known Korean model. They knew what they were doing when they designed her, and they knew who to market to. Although I know some of you ladies got thirst trapped by Eve too. But besides her perfectly sculpted assets, she's another great female example to add to the list of strong protagonists. I mean, other than being a badass combat-wise, voice actress Rebecca Hansen really did a good job here, fleshing her out and making her believable, even with this B-movie-ass quality dialogue. She gave it her all, and it shows. All in all, you kinda know what you're getting yourself into when you play Stellar Blade. A Souls-like action-adventure game with tons of sex appeal, and honestly some great replayability. All the footage you're seeing here is from my New Game Plus hard mode run. And honestly, I found myself continuing to play well after I was done collecting necessary footage. It checks all the right boxes for me, and honestly, it's a blast from beginning to end. Kudos to the developer Shift Up. You delivered a sleek hit for the PS5, and thankfully, this is now on PC, with even more nanosuits to choose from, and thankfully they're also coming to PS5.
Give me that.
I mean, the developers did such a great job here that, again, they left me curious. What else have they worked on? And their other big title is Goddess of Victory Nikke. I should have known. And now Stellar Blade has a DLC crossover with this too, with even more costumes and a new gameplay mode. And apparently there's now also a VR mod on PC.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Stellar Blade was a hit, and I just couldn't let it go. I was hungry for more. I wanted more Korean Soulslikes, and lo and behold, in 2025, I got one. Should have left it alone, because this next game is quite possibly the hardest game I've ever played in my life. The first Berserker, Khazan. This is a very hard game, but it's the kind of hard that people crave, like people eating hot peppers. No, not those morons who eat hot peppers and nearly kill themselves for clicks. I'm talking about your older relatives who down a habanero with a bowl of rice because it was too bland. They eat it because they like it, and their taste buds can only be satisfied with the sweet torture of something so spicy. So, what makes Khazan so desirable for thrill seekers? Well, as usual, it has all the aspects stated before that makes it a Souls-like. Tough enemies, checkpoints, bosses that will kill you over and over again, etc. Pretty much the basics. But what makes this one of the hardest? Well, first off, the tight gameplay doesn't allow room for error. Combat is quick and precise for both sides. Thankfully, there is no being at the mercy of the animations. I mean, they don't cancel, but you can move around all willy-nilly. They're all really quick. The thing is, the enemies work like this too. They move fast, and you better move fast with them. Each button press has to be intentional and methodical. Button mashing can only get you so far, because after a while, you're gonna have to start to learn which directions to move to avoid certain attacks, and to be quick about it. And this is actually tied to the kind of weapon you use. There are 3 main weapon types. Dual wield, which is fast, but not that much reach, so you have to be up close and personal. Greatswords, slower, but powerful. And the spear, a little less damage, but has a great reach, and it's the median speed-wise. No matter which fighting style you choose, it demands your full attention. Otherwise, you're going to be seeing this screen a lot. I mean, either way, you're going to be seeing the screen a lot. So, what can you do to mitigate the hard combat? Well, with any great Souls-like, you need a good dodge. And... wait, what? You can't dodge roll? If you're a Souls veteran, the lack of a dodge roll begins to mess with you completely. I mean, you can dodge, but it's more of an aggressive sidestep in the direction you want. This could be a deal breaker for some. The dodge roll in Soulslikes is like your ultimate lifeline. It can get you out of trouble, and it feels like you dodge a greater distance than a sidestep. But despite how it looks, the dodge in Khazan is still very good on its own, and thanks to the brink dodge mechanic, which if you do a perfect dodge, you become invulnerable and practically Dragon Ball phase yourself to safety, it might be one of my favorite dodges of any Souls-likes out there. You see, with the dodge roll, you can get out of the way, but you still have a bit of a slow recovery. I mean, the best dodge in my eyes is probably the bloodborne one because you can just get right out of it quickly. But in Khazan, you can dodge safely enough to avoid an attack, but then you can immediately counterattack. You even have the ability to unlock dodge attacks for a more quick offensive strategy. And it can be implemented into your combat as part of a combo. You'll be bobbing and weaving and it feels so good and natural. But that's the offense. What about the defense? Well, that brings me to blocking and parrying. Out of all the games I've talked about today, Soulslike or Soulsborne, this also has to be my favorite block of the lot. Not only do the designers make it that when you block, you take no damage at all, it rightly just takes chunks out of your stamina bar, but when you brink guard, a perfect block, you lose no stamina. And there's a decent window of time for it to register. This isn't the CRT days anymore. Monitors have delay, so demanding frame-perfect blocks is ridiculous sometimes. And that's why I like Khazan. It allows you to get into a good rhythm and makes combat feel rewarding and fun. Mind you, brink guards aren't easy, but they are definitely more easy to pull off than say Lies of P. On top of blocking, there's also a counterattack, which is more of a parry than the brink guard. The brink guard can chip down the enemy's stamina bar, which will eventually lead them to lose their stance, but the counterattack does this instantly and delivers a powerful blow. So, how does this work? Well, sadly you can't counteract whenever you want. It's only possible when the enemy does a burst attack, and this prompt pops up. And if you time it just right, magic happens. Now this move is more difficult to pull off since it requires a specific button combination, and your counter has to connect right when they do. But when you nail it, you feel like the biggest badass. But also, to you elitists out there, don't worry. Just because this feels easier to do doesn't mean the game doesn't beat you down in other ways. For example, of course, the boss fights. Every boss fight previously I've talked about in other games have been fun. These are fun, but my god, they require you to be on your A game. You think you have the dodge and parry down? Good. Get ready to get proven time and time again that you ain't shit. As usual, every boss has their own special attacks and rhythm to how they fight. Only thing is, they telegraph attacks so obvious to only psych you out and deliver another hit when you're least expecting it. And if they have status effects in their weapons, like poison, electricity, or fire, your block will block the damage, but not the status effect, leading you to rethink how you've been fighting completely this whole time. If I were to compare it to another game, it's like a bit like DDR or Guitar Hero. Each boss is a new song you must learn and eventually master. They all have their own tempo. After 30 deaths, you start to feel like you know them backwards and forwards, and once you beat them, you're going to have to relearn a whole new song with a new boss. you must study your opponent before you can even triumph over them. I mean, this is pretty much how it is for every boss in any Souls-like, but in Khazan it feels more prevalent than ever here, because these bastards will not let up. Some of them will literally hammer you non-stop, and this is the game's way of kind of telling you, hey, use your brink guard. You're gonna love that brink guard. And after a while, once you beat the boss, you're gonna realize you pretty much perfected that fight. Yeah, you still got hit, but my God, this game requires you to just be laser focused on every move that the enemy does. But the funny thing is, it's not discouraging. You get pumped to try again, which is what you should be feeling during a tough boss. And this applies outside of boss fights too. Every enemy is also, very hard to take down because some of these little bastards are just so speedy. But not only just them. As usual, with any Souls-like, you got old malicious enemy placement, death traps, instant death pits, unseen archers, and even items that are booby-trapped. But you know what? It's still so much fun. And now it's time to take the wind out of my sails, because I've been having such a good time here that I've completely forgotten about that age-old mechanic of Soulsborne games. The lose your souls mechanic. And guess what? Khazan brings it back in its old classic form.
Oh, okay. Ooh, well, so you want to do it the hard way, huh?
If you die, you lose your lacrima, souls in this game. And if you don't recover them and die again, you lose them permanently. Thankfully, there is an item you can use to recover your XP after you respawn. But they are kind of rare, so you gotta think about it. Is that 10,000 lacrima worth it? Or should you risk it? And since we're on the topic of lacrima, there's something really cool about the boss battles regarding them. Like all other Souls-likes, your XP is recoverable outside of the boss area. And there's usually a bonfire nearby, so it's easy to get your points back. But the great thing that the developers implemented here is that when you fail a boss fight, you are rewarded with XP. As you battle a boss, you incrementally gain lacrima with every successful hit. And when you fail, it says you completed a boss challenge, and you are given the lacrima on top of the XP you recover nearby. So in other words, they allow you to grind XP with every failed attempt on the boss. This is a mechanic I wish was in every Souls game from now on. This doesn't make the boss easier, but it helps you progress without having to abandon the boss to go grind souls somewhere else. You can just grind with the boss. This is a godsend for when you're trying to learn a boss's pattern. You can practice with them, level up, and have a chance to progress all at the same time. And it just feels natural, to the point where it can add to the addiction. I usually can walk away when a boss is too hard, but here, I just have to keep going. Until I beat this mother or I just gain enough points. The whole point is that it hooks you. This game isn't hostile towards you. It wants you to succeed by giving you incentive to keep playing. Having said all that, you're still going to want to grind outside of boss fights. Because along with enemies, each area is littered with these red things. These are revenants of adversity. Khazan ghosts that fight you using one of 3 weapon types. Not only does defeating them get you loot and XP, but each one gives you an item called Lacrima of Circulation, which can be used to summon a spirit of advocacy during boss fights, similar to Lies of P. The boss can focus their attention on them while you attack them from behind. And that's about it. The AI is pretty dumb. I mean, they do attack pretty aggressively sometimes, but other times they just stand there. Either way, these wingmen feel natural and are part of the gameplay loop. You can even upgrade them to do more damage or even have more health. Speaking of which, let's now move on to quite possibly the best aspect of this entire game, and that is the upgrade system. First off, you can upgrade your stats like any other Souls-like. Vitality, endurance, strength, you get the idea. But on top of that, you also get vengeance points upgrades, and soulstone upgrades, and armor set boosts, and armor upgrades. And seriously, there's so many things you can upgrade that I wouldn't be surprised if I missed something. And I initially did my first 10 hours of gameplay. I mean, unless you're searching through every single menu or every spot on the map, you're gonna miss something. Developer NeoPie went overboard. And I absolutely love them for it. But yeah, right before I interrupt myself, I was gonna mention one final upgrade path, and that is the other main one besides your level. It's the skills tree. And by far my favorite one. Here you can unlock a bunch of new abilities, combo attacks, stat buffs, and special moves. Each weapon type has its own skill tree that differs greatly. The game forces you to try out all 3 in the beginning, and whichever you fall in love with, you begin to start dumping points into. But what if mid-game you decide to change your weapon type and, well, are you screwed on points? Well, don't worry. because you can reset all of your points whenever, if you want to. That's right. I mean every point. Every upgrade path I have mentioned before, every single credit can be returned to you in full with no penalty. Going back to the previous games, in Lies of P, you can reset your skill tree and redistribute your points if your playstyle changes. However, that's only possible late into the game. Meaning, in your initial playthrough, you better choose wisely. Stellar Blade also allows for this, but it's far easier to change. All you gotta do is get an item called an SP initializer, something you can find pretty commonly throughout the game or even buy from a vendor. It still requires a tiny bit of work, but it's far less than Lies of P. Well, in Khazan, the developers decided to go against the grain, and they allow you to move freely all your points whenever you want, at any point you want in the game. Want to unlearn a skill and put the skill point somewhere else? Go ahead. Want to turn your Spirit of Advocacy into a damage sponge? Do it. Want to change your whole build from a slow bruiser into a fast nimble ninja? You can do this whenever you please. This is easily my favorite part of this whole game. I mean, the freedom here is just a breath of fresh air in a game like this. And don't worry, if you're part of the hardcore crowd who thinks this might make the game too easy, it definitely doesn't. This game understands what a fair challenge is, and it's a great way for players to experiment freely to truly get most out of the gameplay. I will point out that your Lacrima points is the only thing that requires an item to reset, but it's not that expensive to buy after a few hours, and to be honest, this is one area of the game I'd never had the urge to really drastically change. But point is, you can change it too. Look, all this seems very complicated, but trust me, it's really easy to understand. The developer wanted you to have full control of your build here. No need to worry, no screwing yourself over. The game wants you to keep playing. Yes, it demands perfection from you, but you're in charge of how you achieve that. This isn't Sekiro. Even though I did have a few instances of nearly rage quitting, this freaking close. But this game is just too damn fun to put down. Pure, unadulterated, bone-crunching, anger-inducing fun. So that's the gameplay. What about the rest of it? Well, that's more straightforward. Unlike Lies of P and Stellar Blade, Khazan is mission-based, and each area is accessible through a main hub world. None of the areas are interconnected, and there are many side missions that will take you back to the same areas. So like how the Neo series is structured. Another thing of note is the graphics. Aesthetically, this game is sublime. The cel-shaded art style really makes everything pop, and it feels like you're playing an anime in real time. Cel-shaded graphics are future-proof, and I have to give kudos to the art team here because they made it look immaculate. It looks great, and it will stand the test of time. The music is also very good, but only prominent during the boss battles. As you wander around the main areas, there's just ambience, which again adds to the overall vibe. But of course, once you reach the boss of each mission, that's when the epic percussion and choir kick in. Overall, it's maybe the weakest of the three music-wise, but it gets the job done, especially when you're gritting your teeth during those boss battles. Last thing, the story. Let's come back to the name. The first Berserker Khazan. Now, don't be dumb like me, thinking that the game is connected to the manga Berserk. It isn't. Sorry. No, this isn't Guts' sword. It doesn't even look like it. The two are completely different IPs. Instead, it's actually a prequel to a long-standing South Korean franchise, Dungeon & Fighter, which is not very known in the West, but is huge in the East. The first Berserker follows an exiled warrior named Khazan, who escapes imprisonment but is then possessed by a demon that wants to use his body as a vessel, known as the Blade Phantom. The demon needs a mortal warrior to bring balance to the netherworld. Khazan at first tries to get rid of the Phantom, but they ultimately work together as a quid pro quo. The Blade Phantom gets to use him to do his dirty work, while Khazan gets to use his newfound powers for the one thing he hungers for: revenge. Either way, both of their goals require a lot of killing, so you're gonna have a good time. Overall, the story is decent and serviceable. It's got some well-written moments and good voice casting, but nothing to write home about. It does its job, which makes it the weakest part of the whole game. But you know what? I'm fine with that, because this game could have dropped this off in Candyland and it wouldn't matter. Just as long as the gameplay was intact, you're gonna have a great time. I mean, seriously, I had no idea that I was gonna be falling in love with this game. The gameplay here is quite possibly the best of any Souls-like out there. I'm not being hyperbolic or, trying to stir up the mixing pot. No, it's that good. And if you don't believe me, try it for yourself. There's a demo. And if you're one of those people who doesn't like hard games, this one too comes with an easy mode, so everyone can enjoy it. It even has an arachnophobia mode, which is interesting to say the least. I mean, I don't find spiders all that scary, but I do find the replacements unnerving. Borderline, the first Berserker Khazan was a welcome surprise for me. If it wasn't for Lies of P leading me down this path of Korean Soulslikes, I probably would have never given it a chance. And I'm so glad I don't live in that timeline. Now, sadly, this game's not really getting its due. I mean, it's being rated highly, but I don't really see that many people talking about or playing this game. And that's a damn shame, because this is a game that rivals the Soulsborne games in raw gameplay alone. I'm not joking. It's that good, and it deserves your time. So there you have it. 3 Korean Soulslikes that have all set the bar very high. Such an oddly specific subgenre, but it's good to see that they are all winners. Now, if you ask me which was my favorite, I don't know if I can give you a straight answer there. I mean, Lies of P has the strongest story of the 3, and the gothic steampunk aesthetic scratched that bloodborne itch that I've been feeling for a decade now. The gameplay is tight, and is the most traditional Souls-like of the 3. Stellar Blade brought me back to the good old days with its aesthetic and wanting to collect all the in-game goodies. The flashy combat is just fun as hell, and the boss fights are just a blast to plow through. And Khazan is probably one of the hardest of the genre. While sporting the most user-friendly metagame of any Souls-like in existence, it demands you to be flawless, and the challenge is very rewarding. So yeah, I can't really choose one. They all share the podium here for different aspects. You can't go wrong with any of these genre-defining juggernauts. Korean Soulslikes. That is a distinction I never thought I'd be looking for. But now, I'm glad I found it. Well, that's the video. And yeah, what about the future of the subgenre? Well, thankfully, Lies of P is getting a sequel that follows another dark fairy tale world, a la The Wizard of Oz. So I'm actually really excited for that one. And Stellar Blade is getting a sequel sooner rather than later. At least that's what the developers are telling us. And Khazan has no future content or sequels, announced, at least at the time of this video. But we do have another game that's coming out from another company called Relic, the First Guardian, from Project Cloud Games. And going off this trailer, looks alright. I'll reserve judgment until I see more. I mean, it looks good, but I don't really know much about it. But it is cool to see that there's still more games coming out of South Korea. I mean, what the hell happened? Did every developer in South Korea just have a conniption and go, just want to make Souls-like games? But we've got to make them really, really, really good. Either way, I'm excited to see what happens next with this subgenre because, like I said, nothing but hit after hit after hit. Sadly, the only way now is down, but for all we know, we might actually be getting an even better game in the future. Let's just hope. Regardless, just play these games. They're phenomenal. But yeah, that's the video. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys later.